Hi, this is Wanda from Alanda Craft, and today I'm going to show you how to make this really easy charm square tote bag. Now you can use molded charm squares, or you can make your own, or you can use like we've done here, calf facet. We think this is Free Spirit. We made this one a while ago. So anyway, let's get on and show you just how quick and easy it is to do. So to make this tote bag, what you're going to need are some charm squares. You can use molded charm squares. You can cut your own 5-inch squares. I'm actually using Suzanne by Michelle Marvick for Charles Parsons. And you'll need some batting, and you'll need some backing, and you'll want something for your lining and your handles. And you'll also need a ball of wool. Now I haven't decided which colour I'm going to go with yet, so I have 2 balls of wool here. It needs to be thick. You want really thick wool because we're going to use that for the couching. So from my pack of charm squares, I've selected 16 that I want to work with, and I've laid them out how I want them, and I've got them 4 by 4, so that's what you're going to do. Now the next thing is to sew the rows together. I'm simply going to lay one on top of the other and sew with a 1/4 inch seam. And then I'll go to the other end of the row and sew those 2 together with a 1/4 inch seam, come back and sew the whole thing together. And we'll do that with each row. These 2 and these 2, and then sew them together. So I'll go and do that now and come back and show you what it looks like. So I've sewn the squares together in rows and I've pressed them, and now I'll show you how I've pressed them. Okay, so one row we press them one way, the next row we press the other way. Same here, the opposite direction, and this way. And the whole idea of this is that when we come to sew these rows together, those seams will nicely nest together. Okay, and they'll make a nice join. So you can pin them, or you can just feel them as you're sewing. It's entirely up to you. So what I'll do is I'll turn those 2 back, because I'm going to place one on top of the other and sew them with a 1/4 inch seam. And the same with these 2 down here. I'm going to place one on top of the other, sew them with a 1/4 inch seam, and then when I come back and I have these 2 rows and these 2 rows sewn together, then I'll sew the 4 together. So I'll go and do that now. So now that we've got our piece all sewn together, we have to measure it. Now mine is 18.5 by 18.5, but yours could be a bit smaller or a bit larger depending on the size of the seams that you make. So what you need to do is take 2 measurements, just measure across and then measure width and lengthways, just to see how big your piece is. And then you're going to cut your batting to match. So I have my pieces, they're 18.5, and I've laid my fabric over top of my batting. And I've also cut my backing and another piece of batting for that, and they're both 18.5 as well. So as you can see, we've got our batting on. Now we just put this piece aside for the moment because we're still working with this piece. And what we're going to do is I have my yarn here, and I'm going to just lay it across the seam line, and we're going to zigzag that, and I'll show you that on the machine in a moment. So we're going to do that on each of these rows and then lengthways as well. Now the first thing you'll want to do is set up your machine for zigzag. So just read your manual and set it up, and you'll probably want the widest width that you've got, but it'll depend on the wool that you're using. The first thing you're going to do is get a scrap of material and just do a test run, and as you can see here, it's going nicely across the wool. We don't want to split the yarn at all. Now I'm using an embroidery thread because I didn't have any cotton or polyester in that grey colour, but that's fine. I've just left cotton in the bobbin. So we'll just get started. Now you lay it over the seam, lay your yarn over the seam, and just start off gently to start with, just to get her going. Okay, and it's over the seam. And take your time, there's no rush. When you get to the end, you're just going to snip off your yarn and be ready to come back and do the other way. So as you can see, I've done the cross rows, and now I'm going to do the long rows. And again, I've just set up ready to sew, and when I get to the crossing here, I'll simply just lay it down and just keep sewing straight across. Okay, so we have sewn our couching, and you can see it's gone straight through to the batting as well, so that'll keep that nice and firm. And now you want to cut off all these little daggy bits that are on the ends, so the bits of wool. So I'll just do that, just to tidy it all up. There we go, so it's looking great. I'm very happy with it so far. So now we're going to take our backing piece, also with its batting attached, and we're just going to lay that right sides together. I'll straighten all that up in a minute. So we're going to sew the two pieces, as I say, right sides together on three sides, and I'm just going to pivot at the corners and come around. So all the way around with a 1/4 inch seam. So I'll go and do that, and I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so I've sewn the front to the back with my 1/4 inch seam all the way around. Now I'm just going to quickly just turn it through to have a little look at what it looks like. Quite happy with these materials. I think they're rather pretty. So a little bit muted, but they're rather nice. Okay, so that's looking good. Right, so we're just going to put this piece aside. I'm not worried about corners and things at the moment because we've got something else to do with this bag first. So we'll just pop that aside, and we'll take our lining pieces. Now with our lining pieces, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm just going to join those two pieces together with a 1/4 inch seam all the way around. And again, pivoting at the corners. I'm not going to run off. I'm going to pivot, come along, pivot, and come up here. Okay, so now I've got my lining piece done. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to box the corners. Now I'm going to box the corners on the lining, and I'm also going to box the corners on the main piece. Now, if you're not really familiar with boxing, we've got a really good video that goes into great detail. So we'll put a link below this video. So what you need to do, I'll just go through the basics quickly. Take your hand and slip it into the corner. Now the idea is to get that bottom seam and that side seam to match up. That's so that when you turn it through, the seams run in a continuous line. So to help you with that, what you just do is you pop a pin in through one seam and you bring it out through the other seam. And theoretically, they should line up. We'll just do a quick check. Well, they don't, but I'll mess around with this and, oh, well, they're not too bad actually. But I'll tidy that up in a moment. This is just to give you a basic idea. Now I'm going to have a 4-inch box seam on the bottom of this bag. So what I do is I get my ruler and I place my ruler onto the bottom part of that V. Okay, and I'm going to have a 4-inch box corner, so I need to go to 2 inches. I need to measure down 2 inches. It doesn't matter what size box you're making. If it was 3 inches, you'd measure down 1.5. Okay, so as I said, I'm doing 4, so I come down 2 inches. You just draw a line across there. And as I say, you take time to make sure that that all matches up. And then you just go and you sew across here, using a back stitch in either end. And that's all there is to it. So I'll go and do that on all 4 corners, and then we'll come back. Okay, so I've boxed the corners on both my main piece and my lining. Now, we're going to just cut some of the bulk away. I'll just show you here, because we don't want all that bulk in the corner. So I'll just cut it to about 1/4 inch. Don't do this until you're happy that your seams all line up, because there's no going back. All right, and I'm going to cut all 4 corners like this. Now before we go any further, what we need to do is to make our handles. So we need 2 strips of fabric, and they need to be 5 inches wide by however long you want to make your handle. It'll all depend, of course, on how tall you are as to how long you make them. I'm going to make mine 22 inches. So I have 2 strips of fabric, 5 inches by 22, and I have 2 bits of batting that are the length of my handle, and they're 2¼ inches wide. Okay, so now we're going to start making our handles, and the first thing we want to do is just fold it in half and press. Okay. Then we're going to fold this side into the middle, into where we've just pressed. I'm just going to give you an idea, so I'm not going to go all the way down, but you do this all the way down, of course. Open that up and bring this side into the middle and press. Then you place your piece of batting down that centre line and just fold these two bits over, fold it over again and press. And then we'll go and we'll top stitch all the way down and top stitch all the way back the other side. So now I've finished top stitching my handles, and you can see that here I've gone down both sides. It just gives it a nice finish and it helps to hold the batting in place. Now our next step, of course, is to put our handles onto our bag. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to measure 4 inches from the seam line. So, and I'll just put a mark 4 inches in. I'll come to the other side and do the same thing. So 4 inches in from the seam line. Okay, now I'll take the handle and I'm going to just pin it in place. Now you'll see that I've got the handle running towards the side of the bag on that line. Okay, so just line it up with the line and have it running, the bulk of the handle running to the outside. I bring it round. Now this is the tricky bit because you want to make sure you don't twist your handles, and the way to do that is to actually pin it in place first. Just flip it up and you'll see that that's fine. Okay, now I'm just going to go and do a stitch across here, not too far down, just to hold those in place when I'm sewing the whole thing together. So you do exactly the same thing on the back. So measure 4 inches from the side seam, pin your handle, and then we'll stitch across. Okay, so I've tacked my handles in place and I'm going to make sure that they are facing down towards the base of the bag. Okay, on both sides. I'm just going to tuck them away. I've made sure that they're not twisted in any way. And I'll let you into a secret. One was, and we had to unpick it, but I'm not going to tell you that actually. Okay, so now we take the lining and we turn it inside out, and we're going to put right sides together, so the right side of the bag and the right side of the lining are going to be facing each other, and we're going to tuck the bag into our lining. Again, making sure that the handles are tucked away between the two nicely. And we're going to match up our side seams, so I want this side seam here to be matched to this one here, and you're going to want to pin this. Okay, I'll just do it quickly. I'll come back and tidy it all up later, but you'll make sure that you pin it nice and neat and that everything matches. Okay, so we're going to pin this side together as well. Right, just take the two sides there and just give it a bit of a shake so that the bag goes down inside the lining. And then we're going to pin around the top. Now what I'll need to do is leave an opening so that we can turn the bag through when we finish doing our top seam. So I'll leave about 4 or 5 inches here on the back. Okay, so I'll just put a pin in to tell me, okay, stop sewing at that point, and a pin of where to start. Okay, so that's going to be to turn our bag through. Right, so I'll go and neaten that all up, and then I'm going to go and sew it all the way around with a 1/4 inch seam. Okay, so I've top stitched around the bag, and when I've come to the handles, I've actually back stitched over those just to give them a bit more security. I've left my opening here and I've back stitched at either side of the opening. Okay, and now I'm going to turn my bag through. Just pop the lining inside the bag. Give it a bit of a shake. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to give that a press around here, and we're going to press the seam in so that we make sure we catch that when we do the top stitching. Okay, so we'll give this all a good press, and then we will go and top stitch it around. So there we are. I've top stitched around the edge with 1/8 of an inch. and that's kept in that opening that was at the back there where we turned our bag through. But doesn't it look great? I'm really happy with the materials. So if you've enjoyed this tutorial, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more great tutorials.